Chapter 1: The Crash. The night settled over Highway 47 like a heavy, silent curtain. Rain had left the asphalt slick, reflecting the dim glow of the streetlights in long, wet streaks. The kind of night that presses on your chest and makes every small sound unbearable. Somewhere in the distance, tires hissed on the wet pavement, a truck or a car, and the echo of that sound felt like it was etched into the road itself. Captain John Mercer crouched beside the overturned Ford Explorer, flashlight sweeping across twisted metal and scattered glass. A child's pair of headphones lay torn on the ground, their white cords snapped clean in two. He stared at them for a long moment, then at the gray-blue SUV, as though he could somehow reconstruct the chaos by staring hard enough. Cole, he muttered, scrolling through the tablet in his hand. Ethan Cole, 39, daughter. Emily, 16. Officer Lily Thorne approached cautiously, her boots crunching softly on debris. Her hands trembled just slightly, though she tried to hide it behind the clipboard she clutched. "Firefighters are done," she said quietly. 5 kids survived from the bus. The driver's in the hospital. The truck driver, dead at the scene. Mercer nodded slowly. He had learned over the years that the real work didn't happen on the scene, amidst twisted metal and shattered glass. It came later, in offices where the smell of coffee and paperwork masked the grief. But here, in the heart of the wreckage, the first strands of truth could sometimes be found. He motioned to the crime scene photographer. "Get a wide shot first," Mercer instructed, his voice low. "Then close up on the skid marks here. See, they start well before the lane ends. The driver must have nodded off before leaving the road." The photographer nodded silently, adjusting the lens. Mercer straightened and scanned the asphalt. A long, jagged streak of black stretched across the wet road, a smear that seemed almost deliberate, like someone had drawn with charcoal across the night. Beyond it, a crater marked the impact. The bus split in two, smoke curling up into the night air. How? Mercer thought. He had seen hundreds of accidents, dozens of fatalities, but this one felt different. Strange angles, impossible trajectories, as if the vehicles had been positioned deliberately, like pawns in a sinister game. At Bradford County Hospital, the air smelled sharply of bleach and coffee from the vending machines. In room 7 on the 2nd floor, Rachel Miller lay bandaged, her face streaked with fine cuts, eyes wide but focused. Police guards waited outside. Standard protocol demanded that every survivor be interviewed within 24 hours. Mercer entered quietly, in jeans and a dark jacket, careful not to alarm her. "Mrs. Miller?" "Yes," she whispered, voice steady despite the underlying tremor. "I'm Captain Mercer. I'm leading the investigation into the crash on I-47. She looked toward the window, watching the rain-slicked leaves spin lazily in the wind. "You were in the Chevrolet Malibu, correct?" "Yes, I was driving. My husband, Tom, was beside me. My son, he was in the back. Everything was fine. Then, light, a huge light. I screamed, and then nothing." She paused, gathering herself. Mercer made a mental note. Trauma often left people scattered, but she spoke with surprising clarity. "Did you see the truck before the collision?" "No, just a light. But, before it happened, there was a truck with hazard lights flashing. On the shoulder, no signs. Maybe it matters." Mercer scribbled notes. "Do you remember the color? Gray or black? I'm not sure." At police headquarters, camera footage from an hour before the crash revealed a truck without plates parked on the shoulder, roughly 5 miles from the impact site. "Old Freightliner," Lily Thorne muttered as she rewound the tape. "Logo looks fake too. Someone removed the warning signs," Mercer said, frowning. "Why?" He leaned back in his chair, thinking, if the truck had been deliberately placed, this crash might not have been an accident at all. But who could orchestrate such carnage? Thoughts drifted to Ethan Cole, his construction company bankrupt, crushing debts, and Mark Delaney, private contractor hauling mysterious cargo. Too many coincidences for a mere accident. By evening, a reporter from WPTN tried to approach Mercer for comments. He refused. The headlines still ran on the evening news. Massive Highway 47 crash, 8 dead. Cause unknown. For the town, it was tragedy. For Mercer, It was the start of something far more complicated. He stepped outside into the damp night air and looked across the bridge into the darkness beyond. Fresh flowers and candles marked the spot where it all began. But the road, it had not yet let anyone go. Mercer felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. He crouched back down, looking at the twisted metal once more, and thought about the lives that had collided here, literal and metaphorical, in ways that might never make sense. Each car, each skid mark, each scream that had faded into the night was a fragment of a story someone didn't want told, and he intended to find out why.
Chapter 2, The Morning After. Morning came reluctantly over Highway 47. The sky hung low and gray, as if the clouds themselves were unwilling to look down on the twisted metal below. The smell of gasoline mixed with wet asphalt stung the eyes. Somewhere far off, a tow truck's siren wailed, harsh and fractured, echoing across the quiet landscape. Captain John Mercer stood beside the overturned Ford Explorer, hands deep in his jacket pockets. A torn child's headphone lay on the ground nearby, white cord ripped in half. He picked it up carefully, turning it over in his hands, then glanced at the gray-blue vehicle as if he could read some hidden logic in the chaos. Cole, he muttered quietly, checking his tablet. Ethan Cole, 39. Daughter, Emily, 16. Officer Lily Thorne approached, trying to mask the tremor in her hands behind a clipboard. She looked at Mercer, reading the grim set of his jaw. "Fire crews are done," she said softly. 5 children survived from the bus. The driver is in hospital. Truck driver did not make it. Mercer nodded. The real work, he knew, would begin not here but hours later in offices where the aroma of coffee and paperwork dominated. But it was here, among the crushed steel and shattered glass, that the first threads of truth could sometimes be found. He gestured toward the crime scene photographer. "Wide shot first," Mercer instructed. Then a close-up, the skid marks, right here. "See, they start before the lane ends. The driver must have dozed off before leaving the lane." The photographer nodded silently, adjusting the camera, capturing the silent testimony of destruction. Mercer straightened, scanning the highway. A long, jagged streak of black stretched across the asphalt, a smear that almost seemed deliberate, like someone had drawn a charcoal line through the night. Beyond it, a crater marked the impact. The bus split in two, smoke curling slowly into the sky. How could this have happened? Mercer thought. He had seen hundreds of accidents, dozens with fatalities, yet this one was different. The trajectory of the vehicles was impossible, angles all wrong. It was as if the crash had been arranged, vehicles positioned like pawns in some grim chess game. At Bradford County Hospital, the smell of bleach mingled with the faint aroma of coffee from the vending machines. On the second floor, in room 7, Rachel Miller lay with her hands bandaged, small cuts across her face, eyes alert and wide. Police guards stationed outside ensured that all participants were interviewed within 24 hours. Procedure dictated that no detail be left unchecked. Mercer entered quietly, jeans and a dark jacket his shield against alarming her. "Mrs. Miller?" "Yes," she replied, voice trembling but firm. "I'm Captain Mercer. I'm leading the investigation into the crash on I-47. She looked out the window, watching leaves spin lazily in the lingering drizzle. "You were driving the Chevrolet Malibu, correct?" "Yes, I was driving. My husband, Tom, sat beside me, my son in the back. Everything was normal, and then, a bright light. Huge. I screamed, and then nothing." She paused, drawing a shaky breath. Mercer made a mental note. Hugh spoke with such clarity while reeling from trauma. "Did you see the truck before the collision?" "No, only the light. But, before it happened, I saw a truck with hazard lights blinking on the shoulder. No signs, no markings. Maybe it's important." Mercer jotted notes. "Do you remember the color? Gray or black?" "I'm not certain." Back at headquarters, video footage from cameras along Highway 47 revealed a truck without license plates, parked 5 miles from the impact site. Its dirty logo read Gray Eagle Logistics. "Old Freightliner," Lily Thorne muttered as she rewound the tape. "Looks like the logo is fake." "Someone removed the warning signs," Mercer said, frowning. "Why?" He leaned back, thinking, if the truck had been deliberately positioned, then this crash was no accident. But who could orchestrate such carnage? His mind wandered to Ethan Cole, bankrupt construction company, staggering debts, and Mark Delaney, a contractor hauling mysterious cargo. Too many coincidences for a simple accident. Later that evening, the WPTN news team attempted to interview Mercer. He declined. Still, the headline went out. Massive crash on Highway 47, 8 dead. Cause unknown. For the townspeople, it was tragedy. For Mercer, it was the beginning of something far more complicated. He walked outside, inhaling the damp air, looking across the bridge into darkness. Fresh flowers and candles marked the spot where it all began. The road, he felt, had not yet let anyone go. The morning sun revealed more. Workers in orange vests patched the asphalt where skid marks had been. Everything looked unnaturally neat, like someone had erased the evidence. Mercer's mind replayed Rachel Miller's words, the truck on the shoulder, the message in her panic. His gut tightened. Check records, he told Lily. We need delivery logs, vehicle inspections, driver assignments, everything. The next hours passed in a blur, phone calls, files, interviews, cross-referencing addresses and vehicle registrations. Nothing seemed random anymore. In a quiet moment, Mercer sat in his car at the edge of the crash site. The smell of gasoline still lingered. He traced the path of the vehicles with his eyes, imagining the panic inside the bus, the brief window when life hung by a thread. This wasn't just a crash, he muttered. This was planned, orchestrated. His phone buzzed. Rachel Miller's voice trembled on the other end. Captain, I remembered something else, she said. The truck, it had a glowing screen inside, like someone was looking at a map. And the logo, the same as the one you showed me, Gray Eagle. Mercer felt a chill. The fragments of the puzzle were beginning to assemble, pointing to something darker than a simple accident. He looked out the window, mist curling over the valley, cold and indifferent. For the first time in days, he felt something beyond fatigue, fear. The highway had claimed its dead, but the story it left behind was far from over.
Chapter 3, Shadow over the Highway. Friday morning arrived bright and almost painfully clear, an unnatural contrast to the carnage that had scarred Highway 47 just 2 days earlier. The sun reflected sharply off freshly patched asphalt, painting a sterile scene where only a few days ago twisted metal and human tragedy had left their indelible mark. The roadside was neat, almost clinical, gray patches of new asphalt covering the old skid marks and scorched streaks. To Mercer, it felt wrong, too clean, too deliberate. He leaned against the guardrail, cigarette smoldering in his hand, watching the sun glint off the road. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw fragments of the crash, the way the bus had split open, the children thrown forward in their seats, the sound of metal crushing metal. The thought made his stomach tighten. A man in an orange vest approached a state road engineer, clipboard in hand. We replaced the damaged section per department orders, the engineer said, voice professional and clipped. Micro cracks were fixed, and all skid marks removed. Mercer frowned. By whose orders? He asked, his voice calm but probing. Fax from Harrisburg this morning, the engineer replied, tapping a printout, straight from the Capitol. Harrisburg rarely intervened in small-town accidents. Something about this order felt out of place, almost sinister. Mercer nodded politely, then returned to his car, mind already working. On the front seat lay a file marked Mark Delaney, truck driver. Officially, Delaney had been transporting steel beams for a bridge project in Somerset County. But when Mercer had pulled the transport manifests that morning, something had jumped out. The cargo was nearly double the legal weight, and there was no listed recipient. Mercer parked near a library to print older county transport reports. The building smelled of old books and coffee, quiet except for the occasional clatter of a returning patron. A tall man in a dark coat approached, his expression tense. Captain Mercer? The man asked. Yes, Mercer replied, wary. Nathan Reed. I'm the nephew of Linda Harper, the bus driver who died in the crash. Mercer offered his condolences, though his mind was already running through the implications. Thank you, Captain. I wasn't just coming to mourn. I was in contact with her the day before the trip. She told me the route was confirmed last minute. Reed said, fishing his phone from his pocket. Here's the message. They say Highway 47 is cleaner and shorter, but there's construction. Everything feels off. Mercer's brow tightened. Highway 47 had never been part of the official school bus route. Someone had deliberately rerouted the bus to a stretch where tragedy would strike. Can you forward this to me? Mercer asked. Yes, and there's more. Ree hesitated. She said she saw containers on the roadside that night, like something had been transported in the dark. Maybe this is connected to your truck? Mercer nodded, storing the information mentally. Back at headquarters, he reviewed footage from highway surveillance cameras. The timestamp read 2:13, nearly 3 hours before the collision. A heavy truck, gray, no plates, logo partially obscured by dirt. Gray Eagle Logistics rolled down the same stretch of highway. 10 minutes later, the camera feed cut out. Lily Thorne, standing beside him, whistled softly. 3 cameras in a row just stopped working? Exactly, Mercer said, tapping the edge of the monitor. Coincidence doesn't smell like gasoline and money in my experience. He switched off the monitor, leaning back in his chair. We need to check the company, he said quietly, but carefully. If someone big is behind this, or walking into their game. Later that evening, after the precinct had emptied, a man in a thick jacket appeared near the old guardrail along the highway. He lingered, staring at dark patches of oil on the asphalt, then pulled out a phone. Yes, he's digging. Captain Mercer, he whispered. Pause. Understood. I'll remove it within the week. He tossed a cigarette into a puddle and walked slowly down the fog-shrouded road, disappearing into the mist. That same evening, Mercer received a call from Rachel Miller at the hospital. Her voice trembled with fear. Captain, I saw the truck right before the crash. It was on the shoulder, and there was a glowing screen inside, like someone was looking at a map. The logo, the same Gray Eagle logo you showed me today. Mercer felt a familiar chill of dread. The puzzle pieces were forming a pattern, one that didn't point to an accident but to something far darker. He looked out at the valley below. Mist rose slowly, curling like smoke. For the first time in days, fatigue was replaced by fear. The next morning, Mercer returned to the highway. A crew of workers was patching asphalt over the skid marks, as if scrubbing history from the road. Every detail seemed orchestrated. Check every record, he instructed Lily. Drivers, deliveries, permits, inspections, every single detail. Someone doesn't want this to make sense. Hours passed in a haze of phone calls, paperwork, and interviews. He reviewed manifests, contracts, and old traffic logs. Nothing was accidental. Each layer revealed something new. Last-minute route changes, unauthorized trucks, overloading, erased braking evidence. Mercer finally stepped out, standing at the edge of the highway, staring down the freshly paved asphalt. The ghost of the accident still lingered in the smell of burned rubber and gasoline. He imagined the panic inside the bus, the seconds that separated life from death. This wasn't just a crash, Mercer muttered under his breath. This was planned. As he stared into the distance, the fog thickening, his phone buzzed again. Rachel Miller's voice returned, anxious, shaky. Captain. I remembered something else. The truck, it had a map on the screen inside, like they were tracking something. And the logo. Gray Eagle. The realization sank into Mercer's chest like ice water. The fragments of the puzzle were beginning to align. The crash was no longer random. It was the result of human calculation, deliberate and cold. He exhaled, watching the highway stretch into the horizon. The morning was clear, but the shadows of Highway 47 had just begun to reveal themselves. The investigation was only starting, and the deeper he looked, the more he sensed the danger waiting in the fog beyond the guardrails. Chapter 4, Gray Eagle Logistics. By the early morning, Captain John Mercer looked as if he hadn't slept for days. His apartment smelled faintly of old coffee and paper, the lingering scent of dust and cigarettes hanging in the air. On the table lay a mug of cold coffee, stacks of printouts marked with highlighter, and a flash drive with no labels. The young technician from the road department had handed it over quietly, glancing around as if expecting someone to watch. "Captain, I don't want to be seen, but you need to see this," he whispered. Mercer inserted the drive into his laptop. Files appeared, logs of truck movements, time-stamped entries of departures, arrivals, and routes. Among hundreds of names and numbers, one kept recurring: Gray Eagle Logistics. Drivers without proper licenses, routes unregistered with the Department of Transportation, reports of nighttime operations on highways where no official repair work had been scheduled. Deliberate manipulation. Mercer rubbed his eyes, thinking about the improbability. Coincidences rarely existed in his line of work. By 9 a.m., he drove through the industrial zone outside Bradford. Gray Eagle's office stood near a crumbling warehouse. The faded logo on peeling paint barely suggested a business. A young secretary opened the door, formal and polite, but distant. "Captain Mercer, Bradford County Police. I'd like to speak to your manager." "He's on a business trip," she said flatly. "Where exactly?" "New York." "When will he return?" "I have no idea." Her demeanor was cold, precise, as if she had rehearsed not to answer. Mercer left a business card, noticing subtle movements behind darkened windows on the second and third floors. Someone was watching him. Back at the station, Lily Thorne awaited with new information. "I checked Delaney's contract. The cargo belonged to a private construction company called Dale Industrial," she said, "but the company was dissolved 2 years ago." Mercer frowned deeply. "So someone used a defunct company as a cover. Is there an address?" "Only a P.O. box in Pittsburgh." It was becoming clear: deliberate overloading, forged documents, a false route, and trucks operating undercover. Someone with money and influence orchestrated it all. That evening, Mercer walked home through the quiet streets, the air thick with the scent of wet asphalt. His apartment was silent, save for the faint hum of an old refrigerator. His wife had died 3 years ago. The emptiness of the rooms was familiar. He lit a small lamp and spread out photos from the crash: twisted metal, frozen faces, oil-stained asphalt. He wasn't looking for a story. He was seeking logic. Why had an experienced school bus driver been rerouted that night? Why had another truck been parked along the same stretch, seemingly unnoticed? Why had the Department of Transportation erased all brake evidence after the repairs order from Harrisburg? The lab results arrived the next morning. Mercer read them slowly. The truck's brakes were functional, yet traces of foreign lubrication, a mixture of silicone and graphite, were found on one cylinder, enough to temporarily reduce braking efficiency. This wasn't normal wear, the engineer explained. Someone did this intentionally. Mercer sat back, absorbing the information. Overload, falsified documents, a manipulated route, and tampered brakes. It all pointed to a calculated act. But for what purpose? Who wanted this crash to happen? Later that evening, Lily returned with more intelligence. "I found the owner of Gray Eagle Logistics, Frank Dale, a former military officer, living in Harrisburg," she said. "Dale?" Mercer frowned. "The same as Dale Industrial?" Could be no coincidence. 3 hours to Harrisburg. Mercer checked his watch. Tomorrow, they would confront Dale. Night brought little sleep. Mercer lay awake, running through the faces of victims and suspects. Rachel Miller, widowed and frightened, children pulled from the bus. Delaney, the truck driver, unaware of the sabotage. The accident was no longer an isolated event, it was part of a system. Greed, illicit cargo, corners cut, money saved at human cost. It was simple, yet horrifyingly methodical. The drive to Harrisburg was tense. The city skyline emerged through morning haze. Streets busy, indifferent. Mercer glanced at Lily, alert, scanning every vehicle. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's meet him. Let's see what Dale wants us to see." The office was a contrast to the crumbling industrial zones near Bradford. Freshly painted bricks, a new sign, immaculately clean inside. The secretary welcomed them politely, her smile empty. "Captain Mercer, Miss Thorne, Mr. Dale is expecting you." Inside, Dale's office was polished wood and leather chairs. The scent of fresh coffee and varnish mingled. Frank Dale, mid-50s, solid and authoritative, sat behind a large desk, calm, collected. "Please, sit," he said. "I know why you're here." Mercer took a seat, scrutinizing Dale for weakness. "You know about the Highway 47 crash?" "Yes, a tragic event. Our condolences to the families. One of your trucks is involved." Dale's calm smile betrayed nothing. "Mistake. Our vehicles weren't there. All accounted for." Mercer presented printouts of truck movements, times, and routes. "Then explain why your logo appears on DOT reports." Dale smiled too confidently. "Forgery. Someone could have used our logo. Happens often enough." Mercer recognized the type, military precision. Now in business, accustomed to control, losing it was impossible. Bluffing was their default. "We'll verify this with the Department of Transportation." "Of course," Dale said smoothly, "but careful, Captain. Dig too deep, and trouble finds you." Lily stiffened. Mercer remained composed, assessing the implicit threat. Outside, an unfamiliar car waited in the precinct lot. On the windshield, an envelope contained a photograph of Mercer and Lily outside Dale's office. Handwritten, "Stay out." Lily's face paled. "You think it's them?" "Someone wants us to think so," Mercer said. That night, he called the lab. "Fuel analysis ready?" "Yes, diesel mixed with aviation kerosene, military grade." Mercer absorbed the weight of the revelation. If the truck carried even a portion of military-grade cargo illegally, it explained everything. Orders from above, missing documents, pressure from unknown forces. He stared out the window at his reflection, tired eyes. Sleepless nights etched into his face. The case was far from over. The following day, headquarters called. "Captain Mercer, Highway 47 case is now federal. You are relieved." Mercer paused, then asked, "Who authorized this?" "County chief. Orders from above." He hung up, motionless. Lily entered. "What happened?" "They pulled us off the case." She remained silent, then quietly said, "Then we hit the mark." Mercer looked at her weary, angry, unbroken. "Yes," he said, "but now we find answers on our own." He pulled out a worn notebook, pencil in hand, and wrote, "Unofficial investigation, Highway 47," and dated it. Chapter 5, Harrisburg. The road to Harrisburg stretched through a dense, gray fog, sticky and slow, as if the city itself didn't want to admit any witnesses. Mercer drove in silence, hands tight on the wheel, mind focused. Lily Thorne sat beside him, flipping through the dossier on Frank Dale, the man behind Gray Eagle Logistics. "He served in the Army Corps of Engineers," she read aloud. "After discharge, he opened a transport company. Several contracts with military bases, then a rapid expansion. And suddenly Gray Eagle appears on every section of highway where accidents happen," Mercer muttered, eyes narrowing on the road. Too many coincidences to ignore. The city skyline emerged from the haze. Industrial buildings, aged brick, smokestacks, and the hum of traffic, a stark contrast to the quiet devastation near Highway 47. The office building they were headed to looked new. Its polished facade and bright signage were deliberately out of place amidst the surrounding decay. They parked and stepped inside. A secretary, impeccably dressed, smiled but offered no warmth. No small talk, only professional efficiency. "Captain Mercer, Miss Thorne." "Mr. Dale is expecting you," she said, motioning them to the elevator. The elevator ride was silent, the hum of the motor and the faint smell of cleaning agents the only sounds. Mercer studied Lily's face, alert but restrained. The tension in the air was palpable. Dale's office was a mixture of classic elegance and modern functionality. Polished oak desk, leather chairs, the faint scent of fresh coffee, sunlight spilling through tall windows. Frank Dale sat behind the desk, mid-50s, broad-shouldered, with a calm, unshakable presence. His eyes betrayed a lifetime of discipline and control. "Please, sit," Dale said. His voice low, deliberate, confident. "I know why you're here." Mercer and Lily sat opposite him. Every detail of Dale's posture, every movement, spoke of a man used to commanding attention. You know about the Highway 47 crash? Of course, Dale replied. A tragic event. Our condolences to the families involved. One of your trucks is implicated in the investigation. Dale's calm smile didn't falter. Mistake. None of our vehicles were on that route that day. All trucks accounted for. Mercer placed the printed logs and DOT reports on the desk, watching Dale carefully. Then explain why your logo appears on official documents and the truck route logs. Dale leaned back, exhaling slowly. Forgery, perhaps. Someone may have used our logo. It happens. I assure you, we weren't involved. Mercer recognized the type, military-trained, now in business, accustomed to control. Losing it was inconceivable, bluffing, second nature. We will confirm this through the Department of Transportation, Mercer said, calm but firm. Of course, Dale replied, leaning slightly forward. But be careful, Captain. Digging too deep can be problematic. Sometimes the most diligent investigators end up complicating their own careers. Lily stiffened. Mercer, unflinching, met Dale's eyes. Implicit threat understood. After leaving the building, the tension didn't ease. On the precinct lot back in Bradford, an unfamiliar car waited. A single envelope lay on the windshield. Inside, a photograph of Mercer and Lily outside Dale's office, handwritten words, "Stay out." Lily's face drained of color. Do you think it's them? Someone wants us to think it's them, Mercer said. We need to assume nothing, but prepare for everything. Back at his apartment, Mercer reviewed the lab results once again. Fuel samples from the truck revealed a dangerous mixture, diesel blended with aviation kerosene. Military-grade specifications. His gut tightened. If the truck carried even part of this load illegally, it explained the route change, the missing brake traces, and the urgent instructions from above. The following morning, the phone rang. Captain Mercer, Highway 47 case is now federal. You are relieved of duty. No further investigation required. Mercer didn't answer immediately. Who authorized this? He asked finally. County Chief. Orders from above, came the clipped reply. He hung up slowly, the weight of bureaucracy pressing down. Minutes passed. Lily entered the room. What happened? They pulled us off the case. She remained quiet, then whispered, almost to herself. Then we must have struck a nerve. Mercer looked at her, tired, angry, yet unbroken. Yes, he said. But now we find answers on our own terms. He pulled an old, worn notebook from the drawer, picked up a pencil, and began to write. Unofficial investigation, Highway 47, and dated it. Night fell. Mercer sat by the window, watching traffic, noting patterns. Highway 47 no longer belonged only to the official investigation. Somewhere in the shadows, someone had orchestrated a perfect storm, a plan that involved overloading, falsified documents, manipulated routes, and sabotage. The city lights flickered below like a web, and Mercer realized that uncovering it would demand everything he had, his patience, skill, and nerve. Lily watched him silently. No words were necessary. They both knew the truth. The system would try to stop them. But now the hunt had begun. Chapter 6, The Hunt. Fog clung to the back roads like a living thing as Mercer and Lily drove toward Harrisburg. The morning mist blurred headlights, muffled sounds, and carried the faint scent of wet asphalt. Every mile heightened their awareness. Every passing car or distant shadow could be an observer, a messenger, or a threat. Mercer's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, eyes scanning the fogged glass. He felt the weight of the investigation pressing down, heavier than ever before. I don't like this, Lily muttered, staring at the GPS feed. They're expecting us. Doesn't matter, Mercer said, his voice calm but tense. We've gone too far to turn back now. Hours earlier, they had reviewed the contents of the USB drive again, logs, manifests, surveillance snapshots, and internal communications from Gray Eagle Logistics. Every detail revealed more than just illegal shipments. It exposed careful planning, deliberate manipulation, and the capacity to erase evidence with frightening precision. The Ghost Fleet, Mercer thought grimly, had been operating in plain sight, camouflaged by paperwork and corporate facades, and yet deadly in effect. As they approached the Harrisburg Industrial Zone, the gray freightliner reappeared, parked at the edge of a warehouse. The vehicle's presence was unmistakable, flanked by black SUVs that seemed to emerge from the fog itself. Engines hummed low, a predatory purr that made Lily flinch. "Document everything," Mercer whispered. "No confrontations. We gather facts first." They parked at a discreet distance, cameras ready. The warehouse loomed before them. Large crates stacked to the ceiling, some marked with military symbols and others with nondescript labels. A faint flicker of lights inside suggested activity, but no one had noticed them yet. "Check the angles," Mercer instructed. "Every entry, every exit, every vehicle. Nothing can be overlooked." A sudden creak from the far end of the yard made them freeze. A figure emerged from the mist, tall, broad-shouldered, walking slowly toward the loading dock. Not running, not aggressive, simply watching. Mercer's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary guard. "Retreat if we have to," he whispered. "We're not armed for a confrontation." They continued documenting, moving with precision. Each photograph, each note, added to the mounting evidence of Gray Eagle's operations, staged accidents, falsified contracts, tampered brakes. Yet the orchestrator remained invisible, a shadow manipulating every move, every shipment, every risk. The figure paused at the dock, speaking briefly into a radio. Mercer caught only fragments, instructions, confirmations, and the unmistakable authority in the voice. Their presence had been detected. "Time to go," Mercer said, eyes never leaving the figure. "We have what we came for. Let's disappear before they follow." The drive back was tense, fog swirling thick around the headlights. Every sound seemed amplified: distant trucks, the rattle of metal, the whisper of tires on wet asphalt. Mercer felt the creeping presence of observers, knowing that any slip could be costly. At the precinct, they laid out the evidence: photos, manifests, GPS logs, and the USB contents. Each piece confirmed the truth they had feared. Highway 47 was no accident. It was orchestrated. Someone with vast resources and connections had engineered the carnage. "What now?" Lily asked, her hand shaking slightly as she arranged the photos. "We wait," Mercer said. "We plan, and we make sure the right people see this." But even as he spoke, Mercer sensed a shifting weight of surveillance. Eyes beyond local law enforcement had noticed their movements. Power that could erase lives, documents, and evidence was tracking their every step. That evening, as darkness fell, a photograph appeared on their car windshield. It depicted Mercer and Lily leaving Dale's office in Harrisburg with a handwritten warning: "Back off." Lily paled. Mercer examined the photo, recognizing the precision and intent behind it. Whoever sent it was powerful, deliberate, and unafraid. "They know we're here," Mercer said. "And they'll act," Lily replied. Despite the looming threat, Mercer refused to relent. Highway 47 had claimed lives, but the truth hidden in wreckage, false documents, and erased logs demanded exposure. Each mile they drove back was a step further into danger, but also closer to the answers that had eluded them for weeks. The files on the passenger seat seemed heavier now, as if carrying the weight of the fallen. Mercer's mind ran through every piece of evidence, every witness, and every anomaly: overloading, falsified contracts, altered routes, and tampered brakes. This was no random accident. It was meticulous, planned, and deadly. They drove into the night, fog swallowing the taillights, hearts racing, minds alert. Highway 47 stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of asphalt haunted by tragedy, lies, and unfinished stories. And Mercer knew that while tonight might be the edge of the investigation, the highway would not give up its secrets easily. Somewhere, hidden behind corporate facades and fog, the orchestrators continued their work, and Mercer and Lily, armed with truth and fear in equal measure, had only just begun to challenge it. Chapter 7: The Edge. Fog had settled thicker than ever over Highway 47. The early morning light was pale, diffused, casting long shadows across the asphalt. Mercer's car crawled along the shoulder, tires crunching on gravel, every instinct alert. The investigation had brought him here, to the edge of everything he had uncovered and the edge of danger. Lily sat beside him, scanning the live GPS feed from the trucks they had tracked the night before. Both of them knew that any misstep could be fatal. Highway 47 had become more than a road. It was a trap, a chessboard where every piece had a hidden purpose. "They're expecting us," Lily said, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. "Doesn't matter," Mercer replied. "We've already seen too much. We're not backing down." Hours earlier, they had reviewed the USB drive's contents once more. Photographs of trucks, manifests, and surveillance logs, each a piece of a puzzle pointing to something massive, calculated, and deadly. The Ghost Fleet. Mercer had started to think of it as a network moving dangerous cargo under the guise of routine transport. Now, at the edge of a deserted industrial yard, they saw the gray Freightliner again, parked near a warehouse, flanked by SUVs that seemed to materialize from the fog. Their engines hummed like predators, alert and ready. "All right," Mercer said, checking the pistol at his side. "We document everything. No heroics, just facts." They approached carefully, keeping to the shadows. Every creak of metal, every echo across the yard, made their nerves jump. Mercer's eyes scanned the warehouse, crates stacked high, with faint labels hinting at military contracts, shipments, and the unmistakable Gray Eagle insignia. "Lily, get the photos. Every angle, everything counts." As they worked, a faint noise from the far side of the warehouse made them freeze. A figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, walking slowly toward the loading dock, not speaking, not running, only watching. Mercer tensed, realizing this was no ordinary guard. "We can't confront him," he whispered. "Not yet. Retreat if we have to." They backed away slowly, capturing as much evidence as possible. Mercer's mind raced. The pieces were clear: staged accidents, falsified documents, pressure from above, illegal cargo, yet the orchestrator remained invisible. Someone powerful, someone untouchable, pulling strings from a safe distance. Suddenly, the guard turned, speaking into a radio. A voice responded, muffled, clipped. Mercer knew they had been seen, perhaps even identified. "We have what we came for," he said, climbing back into the car. "Time to disappear before they follow." The drive back was tense, fog wrapping around the highway like a living thing. Every sound a distant truck. The wind through the trees felt like a signal, a warning. Mercer and Lily exchanged glances, understanding the stakes. They had proof, yes, but they had also drawn attention to themselves. At the precinct, Mercer laid out the files, photos, manifests, GPS logs, and the USB contents. He stared at them, trying to piece together the full picture. Each element confirmed what he feared. Highway 47 was never just an accident. It had been engineered, and it was only the beginning. "What do we do now?" Lily asked. "We wait," Mercer said. "We plan, and we make sure the right people see this." Yet even as they spoke, Mercer felt a shift in the air. The investigation had attracted eyes beyond local law enforcement, eyes that could not be trusted, and hands that could erase evidence, and lives, in an instant. Late that night, Mercer drove alone to the edge of the crash site on Highway 47. The cold fog enveloped him, and the fresh scent of asphalt mixed with rain lingered. Candles and flowers marked the spot where lives had ended, but Mercer felt the story was unfinished. He stared at the road, realizing the highway had taken more than vehicles. It had taken innocence, trust, and certainty. "It's not over," he whispered to himself. He looked down at his phone, a message from an unknown number, simple and chilling. "Step back, or next time, it won't be just evidence." Mercer read it twice. His jaw tightened. This wasn't a threat to the investigation alone, it was personal. Yet despite the fear, the exhaustion, and the constant pressure, Mercer knew one truth: he could not stop. Not yet. The highway stretched into darkness, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the valley. Somewhere out there, the trucks continued their silent patrol, carrying secrets and cargo that Mercer might never fully expose. Yet he felt a faint pulse of hope in the chaos, the possibility that someone, somewhere, could hold the line. He turned the car around, back toward the city, back toward the files, back toward the unanswered questions. The edge had been reached, but the story and the shadow over Highway 47 would continue. Highway 47 had claimed many lives, but it had not claimed the truth. Not yet. And Mercer knew one thing: the highway would not release its secrets easily.